Perfect. Thank you. So we're really excited about this session because branding is such a critical component to business. And we started talking a little bit about marketing, the importance of identifying your customer base. And we thought we could bring in the expert. In full transparency, we are also engaging Deacon in our branding work at Center for Community Wealth Building. And I was very grateful that he accepted the invitation to be here, even though we may not be the easiest bunch to work with. So we are complex, but that's okay. So I want to now hand it over to Deacon, who will be providing a pretty amazing overview. And then we'll have time to answer any questions you all might have. As always, please feel free to raise your hand, and anything that comes up, we'd love to address it here. And we are recording it so we can keep this in perpetuity. As you all know, everything that gets recorded doesn't get shared outside of this circle, and so it's not like we're going to go and post it everywhere. But there were a couple of people who couldn't make it today and asked if this could be recorded. And so with that, I will hand it over to Deacon, and thank you all for being here.
All right. So everyone here is in the family business preservation?
That's
correct. Well, I have this slideshow I made that I actually just finished, so we can, just before I got here, try to figure out where to stand to not be blinded. I want to go through it, and I very much want to go through it kind of quickly, because I like to leave as much time for Q&A as possible. But just so I know what is important to linger on, I actually want to ask everybody first what your initial impressions of the brand development process are, and what you feel is important about branding. Just kind of give me what you guys already know, what you've covered, that kind of thing. Anybody, just shout stuff out.
For it to be recognizable.
All right, I'm gonna have Kevin doing wind sprints all night. You want to dive a little bit deeper into what recognizable?
Sure. So, for example, having a logo that people recognize as your brand, maybe color palettes, fonts, everything consistent, so that people recognize your brand over time, and that's established over time.
Absolutely. Closing rate is consistency. Absolutely. I want to pass this to anyone else? We're going to keep Kevin in shape.
To create an emotion, or to get a connection with your clientele.
Yeah, making a connection through emotions is absolutely a very strong component of brand strategy. If you can do that, then you're way ahead of the game.
I was thinking that branding can also mean not just consistency, but a way for someone to understand your mission, maybe, or your purpose.
Absolutely.
Your business purpose.
Yes. Purpose is a huge component of brand that people would say it's synonymous with. Absolutely.
Kind of figuring out a way to go, like she was saying, above logic, and above, like, I guess, people's logical spending habits and different things, and kind of try to make your brand stand out regardless of, what the economy may be looking like, or different things like that. So,
would you give me one example of something that comes to mind of somebody succeeding in any business organization, anybody who's done it?
I would say, for example, iPhone does that really well. My students always have the branding phones, regardless of if they have jobs or the money for it or not.
So that's going beyond logic, right? It's like, wait, didn't you just tell me you didn't have any money and you just got the iPhone 13?
I know, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, that's beyond logic for sure. All right, anybody else? Cool, this is a good place to start. So I'm going to breeze through this slideshow, and I'm just like point at Kevin every time I need the slide changed, which I don't right now. I'm going to breeze through this, and I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask some questions of you. A couple points in the slideshow. Some of the slides are questions, but aside from that, I'm going to say let's hold all questions if you can. for the end. If there's like a direct response, go ahead and just like shout it out or flag me down. But some of it actually makes more sense by the end, so might not do a deep dive in the middle. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so this is, I like to start out with a brief summary of what it is that's going to be covered. So we're going to cover what branding is, why businesses that care specifically about their audience, sometimes about society at large, are better branded than other businesses. The 4 stages of brand progression, with a little nod to marketing, the common mistakes that come from not understanding the stages of brand progression. Two things we're cover. All right. Ooh, it's very bright. It's kind of washing on my slide. I should have been aware of that. A little bottle in a glass. I don't know if you guys can see that. Is that coming through clearer than it is for me? How close to it? All right. So branding is the generous act of suspense.
It's actually same on this screen.
Oh,
sorry.
Big long pregnant pause. Putting a label on the bottle. Okay. So if we think about the point of branding, I think a lot of times, sometimes we think about it. The iPhone example is a great one. Branding seems like a way to trick people into paying an egregious amount of money for something that only serves a limited purpose. But if we actually think about just like the basic root of branding, it really is just making sure that people know what a thing is and who it's for, right? Who is this mustard for? I'm actually asking.
It looks like it's mustard for somebody that wants like go above and beyond the basic general way of mustard.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any specific thing they're noticing that might indicate?
Yeah, it's like that French word.
Yeah, that's a little indicator. It's got partially labeled in French. What does that make you think? When you see a label that's in English and French, like, does that create any feelings for you? Like,
It's fancy.
it's fancy, yeah.
Fancy.
Does it signal price?
Yeah, give me more expensive.
Yeah. What about flavor-wise? Like, how do you think the mustard will taste? More mustardy? Okay, yeah. What else?
Organic, like different,
Maybe organic?
to me, like different.
Different, yeah. It's not going to be the most common mustard.
Could be chunky with the seasoning as well.
Right, right. Also, we can kind of see a little bit of it. It's a little bit chunky. Yeah, we see the seed. And so that kind of gives us a clue too. So the decision to keep the label completely transparent is also part of the brand, right? So you can see that it's chunky, that it's like lightly ground, so that it's still got full mustard seed in it, right? And maybe other things. All right. Also, I'm going to point out this little tiny thing in the dead center of that label. It's a maple leaf, which doesn't come through completely, which in combination with the French gives us one other indication.
Canada.
Canadian mustard. All right, let's go to the next slide. How about this? Who's this mustard for?
There's not one more basic than
Someone more French. I like that. Yeah. What different decisions did they make? You know, these two brands about the same scale. You know, small names, things you haven't necessarily heard of. This brand made some very different decisions.
one is for mass market.
Yeah. Which is which? Somebody else, just to see if there's agreement. Which is for mass market? This one. Okay. Yeah, for sure. So everybody probably sees that, right? So there's nothing on the bottle that says mass market mustard, but everybody looks at it and is like, yeah, this is a mass market mustard. Right? Cool, we move on. Done honestly, branding is a service that improves society. And since we're into full disclosure here, I do benefit from the promotion of Dr. Brown. But I do think it's true. Dr. Bronner's a 150-year-old brand that stayed very consistent, and they actually do a lot of work in the community. They do, lobbying and campaigning for political causes they care about, and they don't spend money telling people that they do cause-driven work. They just do the cause-driven work, and sometimes people find out about it. Sometimes there are articles, sometimes there are blogs. Yeah. They're actually super involved right now in a campaign, the psilocybin campaign here in Denver. They're very heavily involved in that. So you can have a brand. Did anybody ever sat down and actually read the Dr. Bronner's bottle? Yeah. It's very clear what they're about, right? And your brand can help promote ideals and purpose in the world. Done dishonestly, branding can fuel chaos and mistrust. Does anybody know Edward Bernays or Leni Riefenstahl? So Edward Bernays must have been in the late 40s, early 50s, was hired by Lucky Strike Cigarettes to make a connection in the minds of the public between smoking and feminism. And he did it immaculately well. He convinced millions of women that in order to assert their power, their personal power, they should be seen in public smoking, which was considered unladylike before Edward Bernays. And he made an incredibly strong association, so much so that smoking about a decade and a half later was seen as a thing that only women did, and if you were a man, you smoked cigars. And that was actually what created the inception of the Marlboro Man, to try to make smoking more masculine. So we see this impact of co-opting political movements to spread products and behaviors that don't necessarily serve society. Leni Riefenstahl, fantastic photographer, very brilliant compositions and narrative. She was the lead propagandist for the Third Reich. She directed Triumph of the Will, and really brought an advanced understanding of psychology to bear to obviously wrote a lot of people into obviously doing very awful things. So the same science, the same psychology can be used, cut both ways. So I don't want to stand up here and say that branding is itself a good thing. It's a very amoral thing. It's very powerful. Consider virtually every band is immaculately well branded. And actually, let's go back 1 second. Does anybody have a feeling about who this band is for and what their music might sound like and who might like it?
Put in the Blowfish meets the Cranberries.
Sure. Absolutely, I could see that. I thought they struck me a little bit like Morchiba, or like, something like that, Does anybody feel like seeing this band would have no idea what their music sounds like? No? Okay. Next. Virtually every dental office is horribly branded. Now, I bring up this juxtaposition actually to point out the impact on society that branding has. So, if we go to the next slide. Because of this, all of society's needs for thematically and occupationally appropriate sound are met in great abundance. And very few people have dental coverage that is tailored to their affordances, lifestyle, and concerns. Every dentist office follows the same business model. And the simple reason is that there's no competition, right? Every dental office is booked out as much as they want to be because there are so few dentists, because the supply of dentists is artificially controlled by the Dental Association. So there are so few dentists that every dentist has all the patients they can stand, and they can charge whatever they want. So they don't need to compete, and they don't need to specialize. But every band has the opposite situation. Everybody that makes music is struggling to get $1, because for every $1 that somebody's willing to spend on music, there are 10 bands. And so bands, just by nature of the competition, have to specialize and they have to understand their audience and serve a specific group of people. All right. I lost Kevin. So imagine Tooth and nail. Who can tell me what this dental office is like? Dental office, yeah, is like. What would it be like to be there?
They do, manicures and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feels really modern.
It's really modern.
Yeah, well, everything's updated.
Absolutely. Who do you think goes there?
Young people.
Young people, yeah. Who else? The people who are interested in what? What do they like? Say it again? Mostly women, sure, yeah, makes sense. It's multicultural, yeah. We got some signals here, right? In just this image, right? What kind of vibe do you think they try to keep in their lobby and in their just atmosphere and their marketing? Yeah, very casual, very positive, right? Very good. All right, let's do the next one. All right, this is another dental office. What are these guys about?
Oh, I gotta fix a lot of broken teeth.
They fix a lot of broken teeth, right? So who goes there? Who are their customers? Athletes, people who play contact sports, right? So imagine there's a dentist who just decided, I'm only going to serve people who play contact sports. How easy would their marketing be, right? They just decide, hey, I'm only going to work with this group of people. I'm only going to seek out these kinds of clients. They just walk into gyms and say, hey, I'm Joe. I only work with people that have injuries from contact sports. I'm a dentist. Here's my card. They get everybody in the gym. If I knew that this dental office was out there, I would go across town and pay twice as much money to go to this dentist, right? But dentists don't have to compete. And so they don't specialize, which means they don't serve a community. Bands serve a community. Economically, they're forced to. They're forced to specialize to care about an audience. Also, I think that most bands are members of that audience and they genuinely care about the communities. Dentists don't. In summary, your brand is what and who people outside of your organization generally consider you to be for. Brand development is everything you do to position yourself in the minds of the people. That's what branding is and why businesses who care about people put effort into doing it. Now we're going to take a look at how to do it right. This is a kind of an inflection point. That's like the first half of my whole thing. Does anybody have any direct questions about that whole specializing and serving a community piece? Anybody? No? Sweet, maybe I covered it, maybe I explained it well. Cool, all right. There are 4 stages which a successful and long-lived brand progresses through. Unsuccessful brands never get out of the first stage. Short-lived brands never get out of the second. All right, so here are the 4 stages. Validate, niche, expand, and simplify. So these are basically 4 stages of business growth. I'm not going to read everything on this slide. This slide's going to come up a few points. So you don't have to take, I see some scribbling. I really love seeing scribbling. But we're going to move past it. But we'll come back to it, because this slide repeats. All right. Validate. The business activity is learning to make a business out of a useful skill. I've worked with a lot of people who, I'm just going to think of one person in specific, who went to, Johnson Wales and then did some traveling and visited a bunch of really cool restaurants and then got some jobs at high-end restaurants and didn't really like being in a big commercial kitchen and decided she was going to be a chef on her own. So what she had was the skill. There's a certain point where having a skill does not equal a business, right? There's administration, there's getting clients, all the stuff you guys have presumably been learning about. So the first stage of business is learning to make a business out of a useful skill. At that stage of business development, your branding needs are very simple, minimum, usually on the nose. When I say on the nose, what I mean is like when you're a mechanic and you just put the icon for an engine that's on the dashboard on your business card and just say that, cool, that's my brand, and just run. That's appropriate for the stage of validation. But of course, 10,000 other mechanics put the exact same engine icon on their business card, so there's no differentiation, right? So you don't stand out. But it works at this stage because your business is run through networking right? Through reaching out, through personal connections, through word of mouth, through people you know and people they know. So at this stage of business, being on the nose and not differentiated is broken. That's the validate stage. Niche. Business activity optimized for the needs of a specific group. So this is, we were talking about, like a dentist, they do their residency as a dentist, whatever, they do their fellowship year, and then they say, hey, I'm just gonna, they've got their concept validated, they know that they can do it, they know they can run a business, they've got their CRM, they've got their billing all set up, and they say, now I'm gonna specialize, I'm just gonna serve people who play contact sports. So that's the niche stage. It's when you choose a community and you serve them, and you make business decisions that are specific to a group of people inside of your industry. Expand. This is when, and not every business gets here, most businesses don't. This is when a business gets big enough that they have to have divisions, that they have to have departments where people in one department know each other and they don't know the person in the next department. So at this stage of business, a business is focused on adding new markets, maybe sub-markets within their market, adding products and services, adding territory, expanding to different locations, or vertically integrating. So that means like purchasing or starting suppliers for the things they do. Their branding needs, because they're growing, just kind of balloon out, because now all of these different divisions need to keep things consistent. And so they start to brand things like iconography, wayfinding, signage. So their brand touch points, uniforms, vehicles, things like that, it really expands, and the branding ends up being huge. Has anybody ever heard of brand development package for a company like Verizon? I think they paid $1.5 million for their brand development. And you look at their logo and people think like, oh my God, the Verizon logo, it's a V and it's a check mark. They paid $1.5 million for this? Well, there's a little bit more to it, because that brand development package came with vehicle wraps, came with polo shirts, came with business cards, came with brochures, came with billboards, came with et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's what they paid $1.5 million for. And number 4, simplify. Once a business has expanded and become very successful and it has something approximating like more than a 30% market share in their industry, they become kind of this interesting like pseudo-governmental space holding entity. So we can think in this stage, there are only a few brands right now. So you think Apple. They just rebranded iTunes to music. Like the name of iTunes is now music. So think about how simplified that is. Or if anybody here knows any luxury brands, how like Burberry and Coach used to have these ornate crests, and now Coach is just the word Coach. That's it, right? So once you're a household name, you benefit from going very, very simple, because that means people can identify your brand, your logo on a billboard 5 blocks away, right? Whereas that complex Coach crest can't identify it 5 blocks away. Right? It also shows power. When Apple changes the name of iTunes to music, they're saying, we are so powerful, we're going to own the name music in your mind. Same thing with Google. When they put out Google Calendar, it's just called Calendar. The calendar app is a calendar. They rebranded Gmail to Workspaces. So now they're claiming the name Workspaces, right? So that's kind of what's happening at this simplify stage, which is not a stage that most of us necessarily aspire to, but I point it out because it's important when we get to the next subject. Yep. Okay, not just in branding or business. This is a big meta zoom out concept. Not just in branding or business. Most mistakes in life are made when someone generalizes advice, which is good for a specific time and place, not realizing that the principle is context dependent. So a thing that I like to tell clients and students is any advice from a successful person is good advice, but it's not necessarily good advice for you, right? So a lot of times people they'll hear something and they'll say, Richard Branson said this, so I should do it. And it's just like, okay, but who did he say it to? What stage of business growth were they in? What were their goals? All advice from someone who's been successful at something is good advice for someone, but it's not necessarily good advice for where you are. Get it? Wind sprints. This man's gonna have the best cardio in the room. In branding, most mistakes happen when an organization thinks that it should behave in the marketplace in a way which is not consistent with their current level of business development. Okay. Sorry, that was a short one. Okay, so I'm going to go over 4 simple mistakes so you can see how this pattern plays out. Skipping phase 1 altogether, right? So in the red, we see where a person might think they are or want to be, and the green is where they actually are. So this is when someone fails to validate their problem solution statement. They skip straight to full branding before serving a sufficient number of clients. They make too many assumptions and fail to get traction with a significant body of true fans. So as these guys know, with my branding program, I require that you have a few clients that love you so much that they will show up for free for hours to talk about your business. If you don't have anybody who loves you that much, you're not ready to do brand development, right? So that when a client tells me during like the sales process that they have those people, they're like, oh yeah, I can totally get people. How many people do you need to come and talk to help about helping my business? I'm like, cool, you already have fans, you're ready, right? So when somebody doesn't have those fans already, they're like, oh, I know what I want it to look like. I know what I want the menu to be. I know all these different things. Before they've actually sold a single meal, before they've fixed a single tire, then they're making this mistake. They're skipping phase 1 altogether. Getting attached to phase 1 branding. So this is the opposite mistake. This is when you belong in the niche phase and when you're trying to hang on to the validate phase, right? So not moving past the on-the-nose validation phase of business. The business makes all the necessary and important moves to get established and is reluctant to leave behind the open-endedness and possibility of a young organization. It creates diffusion of energy and keeps the organization from leveraging what it's learned and accomplished. So when a business is in validation stage, they say like, oh, I'm a carpenter. And somebody asks them like, what do you do? It's like, I do carpentry. What do you need? And it's just like, okay, are you a finishing carpenter? Do you make cabinets? Do you do framing? Do you, like, what do you do? They're like, I'm a carpenter. I love wood. It's like, okay, cool. That's the validation phase. They're just trying to see if they can go out with a saw and get somebody to pay them. But then eventually, if they get to this stage of niching down, if their business is big enough, if they've had enough success, if they don't choose a lane, then they're going to waste a lot of energy because they can't refine their processes. They can't winnow down their tools. They can't hire specific people and train them to do a specific job. So, getting attached to phase 1 on the nose branding, the dental office that just says, Dr. Butterman's Dental, right? Like getting attached to that on-the-nose branding prevents the business from successfully moving into phase 2. Rushing through phase 2 in order to get huge. This happens more with tech companies. If nobody in here is a tech company, you're not super much at risk of this, but a lot of tech companies really, really want to jump to phase 3 as fast as possible, and they'll indebt themselves and sell off all their equity and half their soul in order to get to phase 3. So this is rushing to expand and proliferate operations and touch points before optimizing a single successful core process. Codifying many different processes uses a lot of energy. And if that energy isn't being returned with a surplus, the organization will experience individual and collective burnout. So this would be like, let's say that carpenter niched down, they're just finishing carpenter. They want to expand. They want to expand into cabinet making, right? So they're not necessarily successful at their niche of finishing carpentry. They just want to do cabinet making, and then the next week they want to do furniture making, right? Because they can't codify and get really good at a single process, they can't grow the organization because their employees don't know what they're doing. One day they're making cabinets, the next day they're making furniture, and those things are different, right? And so they get diffused, and this is how people get burned out, is they try to grow and expand before they've succeeded in a niche and develop a surplus. And then the last mistake is emulating phase 4 organizations at any other phase. So this is, people come to me all the time and they're just like, oh, I want one of those cool, simple logos like Apple. And it's like, do you think if Apple launched out the gate with a logo that was basically just an icon for an apple, that they would have gained any recognition? It's just the icon, it's just an apple, right? They didn't launch with just an icon for people. Their first logo was actually super complex and heraldic and cresty. But then after that, they went years and years with the apple with the rainbow in it, right? Because that's actually pretty specific. And you can identify that from a long way off. It's not until you're very big, essentially, that you can afford to have a logo that's that level of simple, right? So trying to get to like own the word, like, you know, something like Apple or music right out of the gate is just too hard. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, done with care. Branding is the foundation of successful marketing, and all marketing efforts fulfill and reinforce the brand. When you've gone through a solid brand process, you really know what you're about, you know what your purpose is, you know what your voice is, you know who you're speaking to, all of these different things, it goes into all of your marketing efforts. Most small businesses market to meet an immediate need. They're like, I need to sell pies. They make a flyer, it says I got pies, they don't care what typeface they use, they don't care what colors, just whatever grabs attention, it's got pie on it, and they put it out there, and some people buy pies. But then, next week, they need to sell more pies, and nobody's thinking about their pies. Nobody's thinking about what they do, and nobody's thinking about them. Somebody just saw the price, which is usually, when you're a small business doing this like hand-to-mouth marketing, you're selling on price. And so people will respond to your marketing effort, but it doesn't build anything over time. The thing about successful businesses, when they put out advertising campaigns, sometimes those campaigns aren't even selling something. They're just trying to convince you that they are a person who is like leading a cause, who is leading a mission, who does a certain thing in the world. And small businesses can do that too. Branding sets up marketing, reinforces branding, right? It goes back and forth. So branding is cumulative. Over time, you develop a brand. Marketing is temporary. It's something you do in campaigns and sprints. Branding is about the character of your organization. Marketing is the actions your organization takes in the world. Branding is your organization's identity. Marketing is an expression of that identity. So branding and marketing are intricately linked and have to reinforce each other. Wrapping it up, if you treat the activities of branding and marketing as a matter of generous public service, if you are honest with yourself about the condition of your business, and if you strategically address your current condition with an eye toward your specific goals as a member of a cohesive group within society, then you will experience your brand as successful. I'm out. What brand success is like? People you've never met will tell you what they believe you and your business are good at as soon as they hear you say your name or the name of your business. You will receive referrals for the specific thing that you most want to contribute to the world. You will charge double the median price for what you do and provide 10 times the value of unspecialized providers. That's the end. All right, we can leave it here, but if anybody wants the chart, it's on the next slide, so we can go back to it at any point, but this is a good place to stop. All right. First reactions, questions, impulses, emotions. Give them to me. Yes.
I'm glad you went over the common mistakes because I have a small business myself with my partner that we started last year. Florida had a shop, Latin American artisanal goods, and we started with a bunch of different products. Like we went crazy, and now that it's been a year, you know, we, like you said in your slide, we have focused on our core products because we got feedback from our audience and we identified, you know, what those unique, valuable products are.
Did you do that on purpose? Like, or did it just happen? You're just like, we're just responding to the feedback, or did you have a plan to slice things off? I'm just curious.
We started off pretty crazy and impulsive, you know, no plan really. But after this first year, we did track like what was successful and what wasn't, and we're making those changes. And like you said, like like, we have certain products that we're like, I think, that people are willing to show up, like you said, and talk about how great this is, because that's how successful this is.
Awesome, so you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Who else? Any thoughts, questions, comments? Yes.
So what if we haven't done any intentional branding, but people tell us that our product is really good and they really like it? I sell barbecue sauce. Do I need to go back and be intentional about what our branding is? I don't really.
Yeah, when you say go back, what do you envision?
I guess write it down.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it going back, I'd call it going forward.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. My short answer is yes. But do you? Okay, you said you sell barbecue sauce.
Yes.
Just barbecue sauce?
And some spices.
Some spices. Who do you sell to?
Direct to the public at farmers markets, and then I also have a few wholesale accounts throughout town.
Nice, that's awesome. What do you feel is the biggest bottleneck in your business? Like, where are you stuck? Where on just like a week-to-week basis, from what angle do your challenges come?
Probably being visible, getting out. I have several stores, like about 14 that sell our sauce, but they're not selling it very fast. But when I go and demo, they'll sell like 5 cases in a day when I'm there, and demoing. But it's hard to get out and do that because I'm doing everything else.
Absolutely. So this is a branding problem, right? Because you remember a few slides back, the statement was people you don't know will come and tell you what they believe you're for, right? So that's when you know that you have a successful brand, is when you're hearing about yourself from other people and you're liking what you do, right? And so one of the things that a lot of people that end up working with me are experiencing is they're like, people love us, people love what we do. It's like, okay, cool, who loves what you do? Tell me about the people who love what you do. It's like, oh, the people who come to our events, people who have spent time with us personally, people who have done X, Y, Z. It's like, okay, what is your growth curve if you have to hand out a sample of barbecue sauce, one-to-one, to win every fan and have a conversation with them, etc. What's that growth curve look like?
Pretty slow.
It's a slow growth curve, right? And so so this is for everybody. If you have no production bottlenecks, that to me, that's like the best place to be. That means that your problem is on the side of business that I'm good at, right? So I'm like, oh, that's super awesome. I'm in the other boat. All my bottlenecks are production. So basically, business has these two halves. There's the whole half of business that's before the point of sale, right? Raising awareness, getting people to know what you do, interfacing with an audience, getting familiar, and then they buy from you, and then you're making the thing they bought, shipping it to them, fulfillment, after marketing, that kind of thing. So that's the nuts and bolts of the thing that you do. Those are the two halves. So whenever the challenges that are coming your way on a weekly basis are on the first side, like I said, at the left side of the business bow tie, right? Then it's like, okay, cool, time to work on your branding and marketing. So that means that you've got products sitting on the shelves, you've got excess time where you could be working on client stuff and services, then you've got a branding and marketing problem. If you're in the reverse position, if you have more clients, more work you know what to do with, you can't keep the product on the shelves, then you have a business processes problem, right? Then you have a problem with fulfillment. So those are the two, big gross buckets of business problem, and then obviously there are smaller spaces within that. So does that answer the question for you all?
I think so.
Okay.
Basically, you're saying I should still determine what my brand is, even though I'm just out there, and people, I think, buy from me because it tastes really good.
Of course, yeah.
And they like the story.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure.
So I would say,
what
yeah,
my
I,
branding is. I don't know if I'm all natural, I mean, we're gluten-free, I mean, are we catering to?
oh yeah, would you say that one more time? And I'm assuming that only what's said to a mic gets recorded.
Right.
This is a very rich and juicy question. So say that last part one more time. I might just be crying because of the barbecue sauce. Thank you. Go on. Say that last part again.
I was saying, I'm not sure about what my branding is. I want to write it down so that it's clear, but we have, our sauce is all natural, it's gluten-free. People like it because it tastes good and it's natural and they like the story.
Of course. So this is a really common thing in every industry, is essentially like approaching a problem, and if you're a person with an entrepreneurial spirit, like, you probably figure this out. I'll watch a YouTube video or so, I'll read a blog post, and you're like, okay, well, I need branding, so I'll just think about it and I'll write it down and then I'll have a brand. But you think about what if somebody comes to you for what you do and they're just like, I could probably figure that out. Just give me barbecue sauce. What is it? It's kind of sweet and it's viscous. So if I just put some sugar and something thick, it'll be a barbecue sauce, right? I spice it. It's like, no, this is more to it, right? So the key is once you identify the need, you want to call a professional. Not necessarily me, obviously. I think I do pretty well, but branding is. It is a thing that if you don't go through a process that is a known process, it's just a tangly mess. It's best done in a sequence, and you can end up going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth if you don't do it in a good sequence, right? If you don't figure out what your strategy should be before you think about your typeface palette, and if you don't think about typefaces with a professional typographer, then all kinds of weird things can happen. And so you want to at least have consulting from someone who knows a process and has gone through that process many times. Because there's an order of operations to it. You think about if you want to make a peanut butter sandwich and you start smearing the peanut butter before you get the bread out of the bag. It's just an awful mess, right? And so there's an order of operations, and you really want to make sure you do it in a tight sequence. Any other thoughts? Question? Yeah.
Can you give me your thoughts about a logo that has a face versus just wording?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different kinds of logos, right? And one thing, and this has actually been researched quite a bit, one thing that is absolutely true is people, you get a spike of oxytocin and sometimes other endorphins whenever you see a face. The exact other endorphins vary based on the appearance of the face and the emotion that you believe it's expressing, right? So this is one of those things that because there's a lot of money in it, people have actually studied this quite a bit. Now, what's interesting is, and this is one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of faces in logos, is that the more face-based logos there are, the harder it is to be recognizable, right? And so the companies that do have a logo that is a face, it's often an animal, right? Because if it's a human, it's that much harder to reduce it to make it simple and to still be iconic. If it's an animal, then you've already narrowed it down quite a bit, right? If you have a logo that's a human and a face, it's usually fairly complex and intricate, which means you have another logo in your suite that is more reducible. So think like Wendy's, right? So the most reducible logo that Wendy's uses is the word mark, right? Wendy's. They only use the character of the girl when they have lots of space and it can be big. Because it doesn't reduce in size well, because it has to be fairly complex in order to be specific to their company. So this is one of those things, it just gets a little bit complicated. But the complication all reduces down to the same set of principles. How do we strategically make something that represents us very specifically, that can land on a lot of different touch points. So your primary logo has to be something that reduces to black and white. It can be cut out of wood, it can be cut out of steel, it can be embossed, it can, you can put it on a card, you can put it on a shirt, you can embroider it, you can paint it, right? So that's why logos have to be simple, because you want it to be, able to travel, right? So that's a big factor in logos, and that's why human faces are very difficult to make a logo out of, because it's hard to be specific.
I'd like to make a comment. You had said something about the advertisement, and I found that if I could get back some of the money that I've spent in advertisement, that it really didn't help, because our faces and, our personalities more or less drew the people to us, to my business. And so, and even today, I still do put money in advertisement, and but I have never felt like I've ever gotten the return.
Absolutely, this is a common problem. There's, I'm forgetting who it is right now. There's a famous, big shot business mogul who once said, half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The problem is I don't know which half, right? So it's a common problem. Like every business has this problem at some point, and sometimes at many points. So there are two kinds of money you can spend on advertising. It breaks down to two different things. This is not necessarily corresponding to the wasted half and the unwasted half, but these are just the two different things you can spend money on in advertising. One is on creative, and one is on media buy. Does anybody know the difference between creative and media buy? I'm losing the back half of the room completely, I can tell. Anybody want to shout out the difference between creative and media buy in advertising expense?
Creative would be your banners and your tablecloth, your business cards, and maybe your media buy is the commercials or radio advertising or.
You're very close to it. So basically, the creative is the planning and orchestration, all of the strategy and all the production that goes into basically creating the commercial. The media buy is the placement, right? And it's really interesting because there can actually be some creativity in the media buy. Like choosing where to put your advertising can actually be a kind of a creative outlet, right? You can, choose to do indoor advertising above urinals and put like a whole campaign into puns about peeing, right? And actually, I made a bunch of those for some clients years ago. And so the media buy was actually a component of the creative, right? So there's overlap and it goes back and forth. And so sometimes when a company wastes money on advertising, a common mistake is actually to put all of the money into the media buy and not into the creative, right? Another common mistake is being prescriptive when hiring for the creative. So what I tell clients, and you guys will hear this actually when you get to step on, is there's this very specific process for how to create a creative brief that doesn't necessarily ensure, but puts you in the best possible position to get a good marketing campaign. And it's very counterintuitive for a lot of people how that works.
Hi, Deacon. I'm wondering if you have a sort of template for what they call like an avatar. So for example, my target audience, she's a millennial, like she wants to feel unique. So this sweater that I sell, is gonna make relieve her pain point, they call it, or whatever. So I think for all of us, that kind of template would be helpful to get down and identify our target audience or avatar, and based off of that, create content for those advertisements online and stuff.
Absolutely. Can I give it to you right now? Are you taking notes?
Excuse me?
Are you taking notes? I can give it to you right now.
Oh, sorry, sorry, I don't have a pencil.
Okay, no, you might even be able to remember this.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to remember.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing that every business needs to know about their avatar. How old are they? What is their life cycle stage? That's the thing that most small businesses neglect. So life cycle stage, who can tell me what the life cycle stage is? What's the customer life? So it's really weird, but there's some like kind of similar terms. So client lifecycle stage means what are they doing with their lives? So a person who is a high school student is different than a college student, is different than a gap, someone taking a gap year, or going like like young adult blue collar, right? So you think about like a life cycle stage is accumulating student debt, has student debt, skips student debt. Those are components of the life cycle stage. Single, married, divorced, kids, not kids, right?
It's crazy because it goes into psychology, so for us, our audience is like Gen Z and millennials, and I guess Gen Z wants to be proud of their purchases. That's what we found out, I guess.
But if you go as broad as Gen Z and millennials, you're spanning 40 years. So how many life cycle stages exist within a 40-year age group? Right?
A lot of things happen that
A lot of things happen.
that are like significant.
Right. So if you can actually like pair your avatar, so this is actually what I recommend to people. Imagine, oh yes, an avatar is, so kind of that, yeah. So your avatar is your ideal client. So a lot of times, this is a common mistake people make, is they try to draw a circle around everybody they want to do business with, right? You don't need to do that. You need to imagine a single person. And for many people, that person is like an actual client. It's the first client that they just like knocked it out of the park with. So you get one person. And then you draw a circle that is everybody you won't do business with. And everything between the circle of people you don't want to do business with, everything you won't do, and that single person at the bullseye, those are the people you can do business with, right? You don't need to define those people, it defines itself. You just draw your boundaries around what you won't do, and you think about that one person. So famously, Stephen King writes every single thing he writes for one person. He doesn't read reviews, he doesn't think about critics, he doesn't think about his editor and what his editor's into. He only thinks about his wife. If his wife likes it, he publishes it. That's all that matters, is one person. Has that held him back from acquiring millions upon millions of fans, right? And so thinking about one person makes it really easy to narrow down life cycle stage, because you've only got one person. So you can say, my ideal client is married with one kid who's 3 years old, right? And then you can actually make a lot of decisions based on having gotten that specific. And you'd be surprised how many of those decisions don't exclude anyone, right? You just know that you're speaking to one person, and it gets really easy to talk, right? Interestingly for me, there are a lot of business owners, business leaders, for whom I happen to know their avatar because I engage with people about this stuff, and I'm not it. One is like Marie Forleo. Her ideal client is a woman who's about 50, who lives in Canada, and several other things, all of which I am not. I'm still one of her clients. I've paid her thousands of dollars, right? Because what she does is wonderful for me, and it's actually better by virtue of her having been specific, because a lot of the decisions that she makes also include me. I don't know if that helps. So get super specific. Come to one person who is the most like ideal client you could have. It doesn't mean you're ruling anybody out, it just means that's who you're talking to when you write. Cool. Did that help? Did that explain? Okay, sweet. Where are we at on time? 7 o'clock, sweet. All right. Anybody have any other challenges? I'd love to hear some specific business challenges from anybody, and just, if they're, as long as they're on the left side of the business framework, the left side of the business bow tie, I can workshop it.
Probably won't help you then.
Okay, no, go for it. I'd love to hear it anyway.
I have a bit of a production bottleneck for sure, and I'm wondering if I should even waste time on branding.
What do you do?
I build electric guitars, custom electric guitars, and I sell them all over the world to different artists. And
What's the specific problem you're experiencing?
I have a lot of customers, and I'm very busy, but I also need to keep bringing in income, so I'm kind of in this weird spot where I'm too busy, but like I need to be more busy to advance, you know, like.
Does your business washboard, like do you have busy times of year and light times of year?
I used to before COVID. I used to have like tax season, like right when everybody got the tax returns, it used to be really busy. But ever since, it's been just pretty much nonstop. Until like just the recent like month.
You said that you need to be more busy to do what exactly?
I need to keep, like I need to keep customers coming in at the same time that I'm also still really busy. Right?
Okay,
So,
if you're not experiencing a washboard, why do you need to keep customers, why would you be concerned about continuing to keep customers coming in? If you're not experiencing a lack of customers at any point, does everybody understand what I mean by washboard?
no.
So washboard is like, like before laundry machines, you just had a corrugated piece of metal and a wooden frame, and you would rub things on it. So it's up, down, up, down, up, down. It's like, and people also talk about like country roads that are just created by trucks. You get like one bump, and then every truck goes over that bump and comes down hard, and eventually what you end up getting is a sequence of bumps because of the truck tires impacting, and it just makes more and more bumps. So it's a washboard, right? So if your business is washboarding, it would be like tax season, things get busy, and so you get busy, and so you're not talking to people, and then 3 months later you got no orders, and you're scrambling and talking to people, then you get orders in because you're talking to lots of people, and then you're working on them, and then so it just goes up and down, up and down. So that's a washboard.
I'm like just out of washboard.
You're out of washboard. Congratulations! That's awesome.
I mean, but like barely, like it's just like I turn around, like this particular bend in the road is smoother than the rest of the road.
And how long has this been? How long has it been that's been smooth?
Like it's been at least almost 2 years now. But,
And you attribute it to COVID?
well, I mean, everybody started playing guitar when they got locked in.
Oh yeah.
Like I ended up with just like a massive influx, and I got way too busy, and I'm still kind of recovering from that. But at the same time, I still have to keep like new clientele coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really focusing on the branding right now.
Are you concerned that as people go out more and forget about guitar some, and you don't, so you're basically, you might have just gotten the biggest hump in your life, it's gonna, like,
That's what I'm afraid of.
that's what you're afraid of.
Yeah.
I got you. So, that being the case, it sounds like you're pretty specific. You make one kind of guitar.
Very niche.
Very niche.
Yeah.
So you've got that. What do you have in place right now for branding and for marketing? What do you do for marketing?
I do a lot of like grassroots social media stuff. I try to do like podcasts, try to get in magazines, guitar players.
When you say get in, do you mean get interviewed or place ads?
Get interviewed,
Nice.
and try to do the grassroots stuff before I focus on like actual advertising. Because, like when I spend money on advertising, I don't get the hits that I do when I do like a grassroots.
Yeah. I'm actually going to recommend you a book. Because it sounds like you've got some time before this runway runs out.
Yeah.
You've got a runway, right?
Yeah.
So, does everybody know what I mean when I say runway in the business sense? It's like you've got a certain amount of money, you've got a certain amount of work, accounts receivable, like you've got resources coming in, but like a plane, if you don't take off before you get to the end of the runway, then the wheels catch on gravel and the plane crashes and explodes, right? So that's a runway when we're talking about business. So you've got a runway. So the concern is you're going to get to the end of the runway and the plane's going to go nose over tail. And right. So that's a big concern. So I'm actually going to recommend you this book. It's actually a book that, has anybody in here got more than 1,000 subscribers on YouTube? Anybody? YouTube, on YouTube.
Not as my business, but in former life, I used to do that for a living.
Okay, and so you had more than 1,000 subs?
Tens of thousands.
What year did you hit that?
God, like 10 years ago. 12 years ago.
Did YouTube, did they send you primal branding?
No, it was before all that.
It was before that, okay,
Yeah.
so a few years ago, YouTube, as soon as you hit 1,000 subs, they actually kind of just enroll you automatically into an educational program, right? And the first part of it is they say, hey, look, this is required reading for all YouTube influencers, and it's this book called Primal Branding. And it is...
Is that Primal?
Primal, yeah, like, like they were marketing to CrossFitters or something. But it's called Primal Branding because it's very much about psychology rooted in like the amygdala, and it's very much about base mammalian psychology and things in I'm trying to think of that zone that sits right on top of the amygdala, that is the limbic system, right? A lot of the book is about how the limbic system works. So primal in that sense. It's like the part of our brain that we share with all mammals. That book is especially awesome for people who work in the entertainment space. So I would actually just recommend read Primal Branding and do everything it says, and you'll be set. If you want anything else, call me.
It was easy, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm gonna go.
Anybody else? Yes.
Okay. I do catering. I registered my business in 2016, and I've been doing catering since then. I choose a name that is like Katrina. Like Katrina is the Lady of Death, very traditional from Mexico. So I choose her because I thought represents authenticity, traditions, many things. But that I am struggling with is about, I have a cafe and I have to open the cafe and I couldn't put my name on the cafe. It was the rule of the business. He doesn't want to get confused. I don't know, he's telling me something about, he doesn't want to confuse the customers with the catering and the cafe.
Wait,
So
who is he?
it's the owner of the cafe, the space where.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I have one rule from him, and he wants me just to be specific and put Sylvia at Lost City. His cafe calls Lost City.
Okay, yeah.
So I have to open 2 Facebooks.
Yeah.
One for La Katrina, that is my catering business.
Yeah.
And one to run the business for the cafe.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm trying to find something that put them together and, like, simplify everything. And I've been struggling.
Can I actually pause you right there? Because
Yeah.
right there, I already see like 3 distinct problems
Yeah.
that should be addressed. So one, you're working out of somebody else's space,
Yeah.
and they have put down branding boundaries
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
This is, anybody else in this situation where they are kind of like in somebody else's territory and that person has put boundaries around what they can and can't do in that territory? Anybody? No? Okay, well, that's fine. You might be in this space. You might have a friend who has this problem. If someone says basically, I don't want my customers, I'm paying the rent, the mortgage, whatever, on this building, I've got my sign out front, customers come in, they see a different brand, I'm doing all the customer acquisition expense, I'm paying the overhead, they see a different brand, and you are now basically gleaning too much off of the customer base that this guy has pulled together. So he wants to put some boundaries around what you can and can't do. That's fine. It's his space, right? What is he doing to promote your stuff and compensate you? The fact that basically, at this point, you're like a pseudo-employee just making stock, making inventory for his business. Is he compensating you more than your catering clients, where you're building your own equity, your own legacy? On the catering side, every job you do under your brand goes to build up your legacy and your brand equity. And when you're in this restaurant, you're building up somebody else's brand. So is he compensating you more for the fact that you're building his business?
I think yes. Let me tell you, when I started business there,
Yeah.
he has his marketing, a person that makes his marketing for the business. So I get a lot of interviews also with CNN and with a lot of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't mind to just be simple as Sylvia as me,
Yeah.
the name. Yes, he did a lot of, promotion for
Yeah.
the business to help me get more customers there.
So he's doing promotion, and the more you sell there, the more you make. Like you
Yes.
get paid like per unit that moves out the door, and it's a good price for you?
Yes.
Okay, then don't make a Facebook page, don't make anything for that. It's on him. He needs to promote his business, and he has put a boundary on your branding in his business. Don't promote that. Let it be all the way one thing or all the way the other. It's either all the way your business or it's all the way his. Because if you start promoting a quasi-brand and putting time and effort into that, that's not really your business, and he could pack up and move away tomorrow, what do you ask? Right? So don't promote your stuff in his restaurant. Just be a good partner to him, do your best, and rely on him to promote his restaurant, and you promote your other business.
Okay.
Right, so that's piece number one. Second piece, Facebook. Facebook is actually a similar boat. Facebook will not promote your business posts. You have to go out of your way to reach out and message people directly. Like Facebook is a pay-to-play platform. Get off of Facebook. I mean, you can keep the Facebook page, but your promotion, you've got to have your own site on the internet.
Oh, I have my
Oh,
own,
okay.
I have my own site, I also have Instagram and
Okay, then just
Facebook
put
and all of that.
Facebook, just like, let it be this little minority concern, because they don't care about you, and they're gonna do everything in their power to force you to pay as much as possible, and that's the most expensive advertising on the whole internet, is Facebook advertising right now. So, just like, kind of put it out of your mind.
And the payback is like this.
Yeah, ROI on Facebook is
Well, and
terrible.
they just recently like switched it up because I do a regular Facebook advertising thing and user promotions and stuff. But they've changed like the demographic that it reaches and like the amount of people that a paid advertising reaches. Where it used to be like you could reach like 12,000 people with $20. Now you can reach like 300, 500 people.
Yeah.
Which was that's actually more realistic of what you would actually get versus what they were advertising.
They're also in an arms race with Congress, because Congress keeps on putting more limitations on Facebook because they're doing such egregious things, and Congress just keeps on trying to restrict them. And so it's like part of it is their decisions, and part of it is congressional decisions. So to me, I don't spend any money on any property owned by Meta, because it's a sinking ship, and I don't like them anyway.
I stopped doing it as well just because it wasn't giving me a good return on investment
Absolutely.
at all. And but it sucks because they're a really good platform for businesses to sell to people.
Does anybody know what the highest return on investment, that's ROI, highest return on investment for any marketing you can do on the internet is?
5%.
Well, what's the tactic? What is the medium that gets the highest return on investment on the internet?
Probably the companies that do advertising.
Well, it's like what is it you can do that will bring you the highest return? No, I'm just talking about on the internet.
On the internet.
And word of mouth actually isn't.
TikTok.
Yeah, it's too small, right?
Videos.
That's interesting. Videos, so Reels right now, you can actually put out Reels pretty consistently. You get a lot of organic traffic, but the investment there is your time. So when folks say ROI, they usually mean the dollar value. So because your time, it's like, well, how much do you value your time? That gets really subjective, right? So just dollar for dollar, what is the highest return on investment that anybody can know? It's actually newsletter marketing. So to use a professional service that's going to do a listserv for you, it's always going to cost money. Don't try to run a newsletter out of Gmail. Use MailChimp or Constant Contact or any other service. But if you're using a professional service, you're going to get a higher open rate because of how they serve those newsletters. So you are still paying for it, and it is the highest return on investment by several times of anything you can do on the internet. Partially because you have to put in the legwork yourself of building your list, right? When you're counting on somebody else, when you're borrowing somebody else's attention, somebody else's audience, borrowing Google's audience, borrowing Facebook's audience, borrowing Instagram's audience that they work to build, you're always going to get a lower return on investment. If you put in the legwork to build your own list, the return on investment is several times higher. So having a newsletter is the highest ROI of anything you can do on the internet. Next question, next slide.
Okay, well, when should you start doing a newsletter? Should you do it when you only have like 3 people following you, or should you start doing it when you have like 2,000 people following you, or?
Following you where?
I mean,
on your newsletter?
how do you start, like where do you start getting people? I mean, obviously you start in the same spot with grassroots,
Right.
And promoting it on Facebook.
So, yeah, the way to start building a newsletter list is to just send text messages to people that like you, right? If there aren't enough people who like you, send text messages to people you like. And just ask them for their email addresses, and if it's okay, if you send them a message, however often you think you can reliably write something that people want to read, right? And the answer to when to do that is as soon as you reasonably can, as soon as it works for you. And that is a tactic. It's not necessary, and I actually don't use newsletters. I don't leverage them nearly as much as maybe I should, because my business problem is on the other end of the bow tie. But it is a fantastic tool for almost any business to start right away, wherever you're at, no matter what your scale is. I've got one client that has 36 people on her newsletter, and she generates money from it. And that's one of those things. If your ticket's high, you don't need a lot of people on your newsletter to make money. You know, I sold, I don't know, probably $20,000 worth of branding with like 300 followers on Instagram, right?
I wanted to say, like, you have a website, like, your website on Shopify, they have an app.
Right.
You automate.
Yeah, Shopify. So, you repeat that one more time?
So we have an e-commerce that we use Shopify. I'm not sure about other websites, but usually they have an app so you can do an automatic newsletter or like even any like basic promotional marketing funnel thing. There's a bunch of stuff. You just have to look at, through the app. Some of them are free, some of them are paid.
Yes, absolutely. Shopify, you can do a lot of your marketing services directly through Shopify, including the newsletter. Same thing with Squarespace. If you use Squarespace, you can run your newsletter and keep analytics and all your reporting directly on Squarespace. And if you're running your business yourself and you're going to build your own website, Squarespace is fantastic if you are doing something that's service-based, that any kind of consulting, any kind of direct interpersonal thing. If you sell products, Shopify is great. You know, Squarespace isn't as good at e-commerce. Shopify is not as good for like coaches and teachers and instructors and things like that. But those are two of probably the leading do-it-yourself like website builders. They're very, very simple, right? If you have a larger business, if you're going to have a complex business, they won't get you there. If you're going to have a very delicate, very professionally created brand, I know Squarespace will not let you upload your own fonts. Like, they won't let you really determine your style. It's very, very limited. Shopify and Squarespace are meant to be plug and play. You jump in there, you're one person, you have a lot of responsibilities. You don't have time to make an intricate, very personalized website, so they're perfect for owner-operators. But if you know your business is going to grow past that, or if you've already got a few people working for you, you want to go with something a little bit higher production value. Anybody else? Next business challenge. I love just talking to people about where their challenges are at. It's like usually where the juiciest stuff is.
For example, another question with my Katrina.
Yeah.
How can I make them? It's super popular, famous or world. How can I make them more personalized for me?
So, okay, La Katrina, your like icon, is very popular. And like you can't own La Katrina because it's just okay, so this is the problem. How do you make it more specific to you? That I would say is going to come down mostly to color and iconography, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So getting super consistent with your colors, getting super consistent with your type, with your messaging in general, and having an incredibly intentional set of illustrations of La Katrina that are yours, right? Yeah. So if you've got that, then it's just a matter of volume. It's just getting in front of people and spending, creating media that people will spend time with and absorb your version of La Katrina.
Is a blog like a newsletter?
Is a blog like a newsletter? So this is really interesting. Depends on what kind of platform you use. In some platforms like Ghost is a really popular blogging platform. Ghost will just like automatically, it's just one of those like toggle switches. Every time you publish a blog post, it will send it to your newsletter. Like it's one of those integrated platforms like we were talking about with Shopify. Ghost is really just for people who are like thinkers who write long form pieces and really want them to be presented really tightly, but don't want to spend time on like web design. So it's a platform like Shopify is for people who have products. Ghost is for people who just write. And because it integrates your newsletter and your blog seamlessly, people who are just like mostly writers really love Ghost. But it's like there's no e-commerce component. You can't even attach one to it. It's really restricted on style. It's really for people who just want to write a lot and have followers who just love to write. That's Ghost. There also Patreon is a place where you can maintain a blog and have an automatic newsletter, and that's kind of for people who usually are educators or entertainers, so they have people who are subscribed for money to their blog, right? So if you have people who subscribe to your blog for 20 bucks, 60 bucks a month, and they'll get the newsletter, but you also have like a standalone website, it's like a blog site that has all of your posts. So there are platforms like that out there. There are also obviously, like any kind of website builder will allow you to just have a blog that's not connected directly to a newsletter. But yeah, those two things serve very similar functions, but slightly mechanically different. Right? Folks in the back, are y'all with us? Y'all sleep? Y'all doing crossword puzzles? Sudoku? What's going on back there?
I have a question for some of the participants in the group, especially the younger folks. So as we're having this conversation, are there any ideas that come to mind on how you envision if you were to take over the business or take a more active role in managing the business? Does anything come to mind that would help like optimize for a specific group or expand or simplify the brand?
Our like technological advances, how are we keeping up with the times, different things like that. Like, yeah, I'm still younger, but I'm not really younger, so you know, things that like the younger kids are on that I'm not even aware of.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to clarify this. So you guys, you started a business. You're planning on inheriting this business. Well, congratulations, first of all, because I mean, I know this is kind of a theme around here, but that doesn't actually happen a lot anymore. So congratulations to you, mostly. All right, pass the mic. Pass the mic. Is this your mom?
Yes.
Yeah? All right, I want to talk to mom. All right, what do y'all do? Online, retail, do you distribute it? Do you distribute yourself? Do you have a distributor? Just online, all right. About how many units of product do you move in a year?
This is really my first big year.
First big year?
Yeah, so
Congratulations again. Yeah, awesome. So what's a big year?
my big year, well, I'm just like people are just now like really like.
Is it okay that I ask that? If you're like, I don't want to talk numbers, that's cool.
I'm not gonna tell you my numbers.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, but I'm just telling you that, I'm not gonna tell you because, but it's just now starting to grab hold.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I asked this, the initial question was about, like, how do I keep up with technology? So the scale of the business, how big it is, the scale at which you're operating is like probably the number one determining factor in terms of how to keep up with technology, right? Because if it's you in your kitchen, or maybe you're in a commissary, but it's like in the neighborhood, that's one thing. If you got a manufacturer someplace else that has to be kept track of, and you're doing, quality assurance testing, and you're sending stuff to the lab on rotation, and you got staff, like that's a different ball of wax, right? So yeah, what kind of technology, I guess pass the mic back. What kind of technology were you thinking when you said, like, how am I gonna keep up with technology with the business I'm getting from somebody else?
So one of our like long-term goals is to eventually go wholesale and probably export. So it's probably get to that level, and just me thinking about trying to take that whole task on by myself is a little bit overwhelming. But I still have to learn like how to make the product. And
all right. I'm gonna ask you a cruel question right now. This is an evil thing of me to ask. And I want you, not mom, because I think mom might know, but I want to see if you know. What is your MSRP?
What does that mean?
that was like half the test right there. This is totally cool. MSRP is your manufacturer suggested retail price. All right. That's okay.
It's not a secret or anything like that, it's just that trying to get her to come over and sit down when you teach her.
And the boring stuff, that's why I went straight to the boring
Yes,
stuff.
exactly, the boring stuff.
Like the
yes,
real boring
boring
stuff.
And for me to show her what I do on a day-to-day basis, how I have the business set up and things like that, is to get her there. But she's young and single, so she don't.
All right, so here's a question. If the goal is to go wholesale, what's the margin? I know you don't want to talk numbers, but like what is the realistic margin on your average of your core product you sell the most of? Because, so here's the thing is, so every retailer wants to make minimum 40%. Luxury product, more, right? So they're making 40% of the MSRP. That's minimum. So you think then about what you need to make. And so it's possible, and this is actually sometimes the best move for body products, highly competitive industry. Best move is to keep distributing yourself, and even to become a distributor for other people. Sometimes. If you want to partner with a manufacturer and get those prices down, then you can go wholesale. If you don't, then you usually can't go wholesale. And so that's like a big pivot there. Like those.
I think I said I wouldn't go wholesale, but the more that I think about it, and.
You have to offload all that distribution responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's great.
No,
But
no, I want, no, it is great, but I think I would lose so much integrity.
you just become a quality assurance. That's your entire job becomes quality assurance. If somebody else is doing distribution, which means you can't do the manufacturing yourself because you have to get the price down. So you're in the middle, testing and monitoring and managing quality and supporting the brand and the marketing, and that's all you have left. You don't make products, you don't distribute products.
And that would kill me if I couldn't.
That would kill you, then you're not going wholesale. I did start out as a manufacturer. So, yeah, my first business was technically registered as a manufacturer. Actually, Scribbles, I think, is still on the IRS books as a manufacturing business.
So I guess like my question is, if you're making the brand bigger and this is like around, small businesses and different things like that, how do you manage to keep the same integrity and the same feel, I guess, for your customers, of like that small business, like family oriented, like ancestral type of things that I've seen coming from like millennials and younger generations and different things? How do you kind of preserve that while also being like?
So the biggest key is actually what we're talking about back here at the beginning, which is that customer avatar. And this kind of comes back into just like individual self-care psychology, is people who think about themselves get depressed. Think about yourself more than you think about others, you will be sad. You will have a sad life. And as a business, if you think about yourself, like, how do we do this? How do we solve this problem? If you spend you spend more than like 10, 15% of your business thinking about the business, like, itself, the business gets depressed. So the answer to that question is, who's your customer? What do they need? Like, this is how you keep it fresh and how you keep it authentic and all these things. You focus on a group that you serve, and you just stay in contact with them. You make that person your friend, and you just call them and ask them what's wrong, how they're doing, what they need, what's troubling them. You just ask, like, what are you going through? And then that's whatever the answer is, that's now, you should write it down, you frame it in terms of what you sell, you actually solve that problem, you make your business decisions to address what those people need, and then that's your business. Right? Does that make sense? Does it make sense in context of what you do? Right, that's the answer.
So, for your business that you guys make beauty, for like bath bombs, right, and things like that, like I'm thinking, for example, in the winter, like, you're thinking about those people that, your skin gets like really dry in the winter, so like your advertising might say like soothe your skin, and then you have something that looks really silky and buttery, or, what I mean? Is that what you're talking about, like a message that resonates with the audience, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely, that can be a good place to start. That's really close to the product. So we're talking about those 4 stages as you move across. So at the beginning, you're always on the nose, right? And when I say on the nose, I mean it's about what you do. But as you grow, it gets less on the nose, right? So sometimes you're talking to those people. Like one thing I've realized is that my clients fucking love dogs. Like everybody that I work for loves dogs. So like I put my dog bag behind my desk. So my dog comes, like, walks through Zoom calls. I have a bone behind my desk because I love my dog and my clients love dogs. So I have my dog coming and going behind my desk, right?
So they're like, I trust the dog people and not cat people.
They're dog people, right? It's not necessarily not cat people. Sometimes it's not cat people, but it's like I know that my clients are dog people, like by and large, the dog people, right? I know that my clients drive Hondas, so I talk about like CRV issues, I know that my clients, they got their first degree in something very idealistic, and most of them went back and got a kind of practical degree, even if they went back and fell back onto their idealistic degree.
You make us sound also predictable.
I talk to my clients, I talk about their lives.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. It's like most of my clients got their first degree in journalism or the humanities or political science, and then they got a certification in a trade, or they went to paramedic school, or they were firemen for a while, volunteered possibly in some place. It's just, these are my clients. First degree, super idealistic. Second degree or vocational certification, very practical. That's most of my clients, And so I know these things about them, and so I know the problems they have. Just like, hey man, how are your knees? Because I know on your time off, you're in the garden all the time, and you don't like those raised beds because you want the long seasons, right? So it's like, I know those things. And so, so it can sometimes move beyond just the product itself, and it can move into like what their lives are like in general. And you talk about like, just like those things like that are like kind of outside of the product. The master of this was David Ogilvy. He's the guy that hypothetically Don Draper from Mad Men was based on, although I don't think they actually have all that much in common except how they dress. But he got super intimated with his clients' customers, right? He would learn all kinds of things about this. And so you read his advertisements for men's dress shirts. One of his big clients was a company that sold men's dress shirts. He wrote these ads that like really got into what these men are doing in these shirts that are the ideal clients of the dress shirt company. It was like photographs of them in their offices at, like with lighting and angles that they would recognize because it's how their offices are actually, like everything, like, getting into their lives. And the thing is, it's not just like lip service. It's like actually design the qualities of your product. So I was talking about before about the mouth guard, that dental office, right? So like I've lost a bunch of teeth doing like combat sports, right? And my dentist, I talked to him once about getting a custom mouth guard, because partially I've lost teeth because of ill-fitted mouth guards, right? I talked to him, I'm like, hey, how many of these custom mouth guards do you make in a year? And he's like, 2 or 3. I'm like, cool, I'm not even gonna bother. He doesn't do it, he doesn't care about it. He wasn't just like, oh man, you want one of these? Like, I love making these. Even if you only make 2 or 3, he's like, oh, I only make 2 or 3, but I really want to get, anything like that. It's some enthusiasm for what I do and who I am would have really moved it a long way. But he was like, I make 2 or 3. I'm like, oh, screw you then. I'm not going to spend $1,200 on this custom mouth guard that you might not even really know how to make right? And so you make your business decisions, and you change your product, and you change your services according to what you learn about people. And so the brand is more than just like the language and the color scheme. It's like how the product is shaped and how it's packaged and how it's available and where it's distributed and all of those things.
How do you use it to get to more
What do you do? Are you catering? You said.
Yes.
Okay.
What is the best way to get to know our customers, especially for we do catering as well, but we don't have enough time to have a conversation with them. We see them serve them for 2 hours.
What are you doing with your time?
Say it?
What are you doing with your time?
What am I doing with
You said you don't have enough time. What are you doing with your time?
Everything.
So, so really, like, where does the time go in your business?
Learning, right now expanding the business, we're at that point, you guys mentioned. At what point do we know, we have a logo, but, and it's very, specific to what we have, because they don't know our business, so we let them know, hey, we serve tacos, we serve.
What's the logo?
It's, it's a shipping container.
Shipping container? Do you have it on here right now? I want to see this. That's, I didn't expect that. I did not expect you to say a shipping container. Taco block.
So our first kitchen, we like to recycle, we created a kitchen out of a shipping container.
Got it.
And our food trucks now are done with a shipping container. So with the images of the food, we let them know what we provide. We try to be specific to what it is that we serve.
I'm going to tell you right now, you are a unicorn because you have a great brand and a terrible logo. Most businesses have a good logo first, and then they develop a decent brand. But you've got your vehicle matches your business name, matches like the ethos. Like that's the complex part of branding. This logo has to go. This is really bad. But it sounds like the brand is working. You said you're expanding now. So like, what's the expansion like?
Well, maybe, and I don't think we're in that point where our logo identifies us. It's more of our service.
Right.
They create a reputation, we deliver their service, so we're at that point where like, what do we do with their logo, because now we're focusing, we know the path that we're gonna take. And, that was one of our questions, too. What do we do? Do we focus more on food when we market? Or we need to define our brand and let our customers know what it is, who we are, and why we're there, and what we're going to provide them. So it gets that like, do we focus, when we market, do we talk more about our food or about who we are? I know you mentioned we need to do both.
So I'm hearing 2.5 questions. The half is the one I want to ask. But the first question was, how do we get to know the customers? We don't have time to, like, with them. It sounds like when you're interfacing with the customers, you don't have a lot of time. A food truck person in and out, right? They're like in and gone, right? There are a few tactical ways of doing that, of getting more time with that person that's coming in and out of the food truck, right? And there's a kind of a more long-term strategic way of doing it. I'm gonna give you a simple tactic, so you have something you can just do right away, right? So you've got a food truck, and you have an Instagram account?
And mostly we communicate with.
Okay, but you have an Instagram account?
Yes.
Right, so here's what you do. Is your Instagram handle, like, is it on the food truck? Do you have like a little decal? Okay, cool. So you add a little flyer that says, follow us on Instagram and get a free something you can afford to give away, right? So just for a follow, or even take a picture with us, tag us on Instagram with your food, and you get this thing. So here's what you do. It's gonna sound creepy, but I'm telling you to do it anyway. Is as soon as they do whatever that thing is, whether it's take a picture with the taco and you give them the free thing, or if it's a follow or whatever, you stalk them on the internet, right? So now you know who they are, because if they followed you or posted, you can go to their account, you can see their page, you can see who they follow, you can see what they comment, you can see what they like, you can follow them, you can talk to them, right? So they're only at the food truck for 2 minutes, long enough to get their food. But they're like, oh man, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna pose with this taco and I'm gonna get a free sopapilla or something, right? They get their free sopapilla, they post it online, and now you can see who their friends are. You can see what music they like. You can see what they do on the weekend, right? So you know a lot about them. You don't even have to talk to them. Yeah, you should talk to them. But even before you talk to them, you can see what they did this weekend, so you know them pretty well. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's how you do it. Yeah. Wait, hold on. There were 2.5 questions. I answered one of them.
The other question was, when is that point that you know that your business is ready to, that it's in that growth spurt that you mentioned? When are we ready to move on?
So, you said you're expanding. How big is your expansion?
We just purchased our brick and mortar, so we have been.
So you have a restaurant now.
Well, it's gonna be a venue, it's gonna be a bar, and it's gonna be open.
A venue like a music venue?
No, a venue for weddings versus.
Oh, wow.
And then.
So you got an event space
Event space.
that's also gonna be a commissary, and you also have food trucks?
Yes,
Yeah, you should do
that's
it.
all we do,
Yeah.
catering with the food trucks.
Catering the food trucks.
And now we're gonna have our own commercial kitchen, so we're gonna be able to distribute from there.
So when you do a catering gig, the food truck shows up. You don't do catering where you go in and set tables and walk around, okay, you don't do that. It's just the food truck shows up, and that's what that does.
And we have that option, of course,
Right.
but maybe focus more on it and know that it's
Okay.
specifically with.
I would say you are absolutely at the Michigan, you're at stage 2, like definitively, right? Because you don't have different divisions that are taking over different, are you in just the city?
We have, no, we go all over.
No, but I mean, like, do you have like a food truck in El Paso and a food truck in LA and like a food?
No, not
No,
yet, but we
okay.
want to.
So that would be stage
We
3.
want a franchise, that's our next.
Yeah, so that's 3.
Point where.
So phase 3 is simply that, right? While you're in phase 2, do a full brand development process. Not necessarily with me. If you don't have explicit, if your whole business isn't built around like an economic, it's like social, like kind of political thing, probably not with me. But you can write me and I'll refer you to some people. No, it's not, somebody say ouch. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to reject you. I'm just saying, like, I can refer you to much better people. Because I know all kinds of brand development specialists who like are all about food and food trucks and things like that. And I can get you to somebody who works with just your kind of business. But while you're in this phase 2, before you franchise, before you start thinking about franchising, you want to have a full suite of brand assets, patterns, colors, like an iconography that is uniquely you, that's very, very powerful. So you can build up a lot of brand equity, and it's going to make franchising super easy.
Yeah,
Absolutely. There's something back there. Were you saying something? Oh, okay, no. All right. Cool. Very good. Of course, yeah. Did that make sense to, we were talking about food trucks, and I know we got a few food businesses in here. Did anybody have a follow-up question on like food businesses expanding, or, you know, like, I think I said some kind of complicated things in there. It sounds like a larger business. Did all that make sense? Everybody getting tired? Cool. All right.
I have one more question that I just want to engage some of the folks in the room again, but as, like, looking at Saul, Katia, and Carla, like, as you think towards the future, how do you want to see the brand evolve for, like, Mujeres Emprendedoras? Or how do you want to see the brand evolve for Taco Block?
That's a good question, that's what we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, but I'd love to hear from them too.
Yeah, actually, I want to get clarification on the question. What do you mean by how do you want to see it evolve? What does that mean?
Yeah, like, what's your vision for the future of business?
Like more fun, like, you know, it's like when you go to like In-N-Out, or like you go to like one of those restaurants, how there's like theme, like they have like the hat In-N-Out, and like this, like the fun theme. Yeah, I want, like that's how I like.
If I understand correctly, you want something that is, that creates fun, that is specific to your business. You want there to be something iconic that's recognizable, but it's not just a logo. It sounds like it's like the way things are done, the environment itself. Yes, absolutely. So just gonna throw this out there, like for CCWB, part of the brand package is like looking at this space, right? So this is the brand. You guys all came out to hang out in this space, and it's like, I think it's a pretty good space. I was telling Kevin earlier, I love the height and that it's got some dimensionality to it. There's a lot to work with here, but I don't see any brand expression decisions that were made in slightly warm gray with white trim. Like nobody was just like, this is how you uplift the local economy when they pick those colors.
So true.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
So true.
Like, you know, so, and it's like, you know, it's like there are all kinds of things. Like there's the lighting fixtures. There's all kinds of different like places for intentionality. You know, I really love this leather couch that's got really bold seams and has this kind of classic feel. I also like that couch, but they don't match. You know, they don't go together. They don't belong in the same space, and it gives this really like kind of ad hoc feel. right? I want to keep one of them. Like, I think that you guys should keep one of them, but not both of them, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to, and so the intentionality you're talking about, where somebody comes in, they're like, yes, I'm at the taco block. They know you don't have to see the logo or the name. They just know from like the way things are shaped and the way things sound, sometimes the way things smell. I had one client where it was it was a kind of a succession thing. There was like an overlap between two owners. There was one owner that was trying to bow out, and there's a new owner. And the new person brought in a scented candle that was not the scent it was a clothing store, it was a high-end consignment clothing store. And she was just like, I don't remember what it was. It was like vanilla clove or something like that. And they had this knockdown, drag out fight. It's like, we do not smell like that. That's not what the shop smells like. It's not, there's no clothes. That's like goth kids at Paris on the Platte, never. You know, and it was this huge fight with them, right? But it's over those things. It's like the older woman had developed this incredibly specific thing. It was like, it's always chamomile. My clients, they come in, they walk in, it sets the tone. They completely leave their old world behind because they walk in and they're immersed. And you can't bring in a new scent because it'll ruin this brand equity, right? So you've got the right instincts there. Like, I want to create the environment where people walk in and they're like, boom, I'm having a good time now because this place is about having a good time, and the whole thing's set up and it's an emotional trigger. So absolutely, that's what you want to develop.
Yeah, but the thing is about like food trucks is that that's not really that like food trucks are not set up that way for like catering.
Why not?
Usually, well, I don't think so. Like it's just like in and out, or like I think Mexican food trucks, like people are just dressed like normally.
I want to encourage y'all. You can do whatever the hell you want with your business. If you want your taco truck to have a branded scent, do it. I'm forgetting the name of him, but there is a designer who's just a scent designer. They'll take natural occurring scents and they'll find a way to synthesize it, and they'll give you little hyper-potent synthetic alcohols of that scent, even if it's French fries. Obviously, like famously McDonald's did this, right? And you just put it behind a fan on an oil diffuser, right? And people block away from your food truck, they're like, cilantro, like, you're not even cooking that much cilantro, right? Whatever you want to do, whatever you want your brand experience to be, make it, right? And make it really unique. Do you know Harley Davidson actually got a trademark on the engine sound? Like, their muffler has a specific piece in it that creates that Harley Davidson sound, and they trademarked it, right? Nobody had ever trademarked a sound before in all history. Harley Davidson did it, right? Like, think that big and give yourself room to have any kind of expression. If you want to have the first taco truck where everybody wears a bow tie, have a taco truck where everybody wears a bow tie. If you want to have the first taco truck where, like, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, if you feel constrained by, taco trucks don't really do this, then that's the opportunity. Yeah, do something nobody else does. So when I was talking about my first business in manufacturing, there's a print shop. Right, so mostly T-shirts. That was like the bread and butter was T-shirts. So big screen printing press, conveyor belt dryer, like whole thing. And so I still kind of keep track of people doing cool stuff in T-shirt spaces. And there's this thing I came across recently. Is this guy? I'm actually forgetting his name, but that's not the strong part of his brand. It's interesting. It's not always the name that's the strongest part of the brand. His tagline is "World's First T-Shirt Bakery." Right? And it's just like, that's really cool. And also, if you're not a screen printer, you don't realize that every T-shirt shop is a T-shirt bakery because every T-shirt goes through an oven. Like, it's a conveyor oven, just like at Domino's or something like that. It's like, every T-shirt goes through one of those ovens. So he just like seized on it. It's like nobody capitalizes on his iconography, so he just called his shop a T-shirt bakery. And on his website, it's got this crazy pop-up. As soon as you get to the URL, there's like, the screen goes black, and this pop-up comes up that says, here at this shop, we support people of all identities. We support people of all nationalities. We support a boundaryless world and all these things. And if you don't support those things, we probably don't want to sell you a T-shirt. Like, that's just like, wow, that is bold. He's just like, if you're not down for this, get out. You don't want to wear my shirts? I don't want to sell them to you. It's brilliant, right? I've never seen a T-shirt printer do it before. right? So it's like, no, don't get like, wherever you see something that nobody does in your industry, that's the thing to do if you like it, right? Anything else? Somebody in the back has got to have a thought, an observation, criticism. Did I misspell anything? Did you catch like a unattributed quote? Anybody want to defend Lenny Reifenstahl?
Maybe they are
She has
impact,
a very complex life.
they are impact for you because they are talking all the time.
Yeah.
I know.
So I keep them quiet because they are impressed.
Very impressive, very good.
No.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we hear all the time when we make the logo for Mujeres and all the branding that we have is that how important it is to maintain that for the years or over the years. But
Wait, say
how
that
do
last
you
part again.
know?
It's hard to maintain over the years?
No. They say how important it is to make
Oh,
it
okay.
good when you make the first time and then maintain it good.
Yeah.
But my question is, how do you know if it's working or not? How do you know if you have to change your logo or like
Yeah.
that is our logo?
Okay. Is that the only mark you have, or do you have a suite of logos? Because that's really complicated. Do you have just the standalone women themselves, or those individual marks that you also use? Do you use just the word mark by itself?
We use only that one, but we want to make 3 different ones to. Well, we do 3 different things in our club. We make food, and then we make jewelry, and then we make salsas. And we want to change this. We want like this with like a umbrella for the other 3.
Okay.
But that's something that we have to work to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am a little bit scared to change to those kind of things and make
How old is the
damage to
business?
the business. What?
How long has the business been around?
We started in 2017.
2017. And how many unique customers do you have in a year? In like how many zeros? Like 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000?
In a year?
In 1 year, how many unique customers?
Well, I think in the COVID we almost stopped completely, but if I think in this year, I think we already get like 40 people in this year.
40 unique customers? Okay. So, and how large is your largest, and are you on like social media? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have any followings that you can count?
Actually, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but we don't use them.
What's the biggest?
That's very hard for me to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I asked a real hard question. What's the largest body of like audience that you can point to? Whether it's a Facebook like count or an Instagram follower count or people on a newsletter list, what is the largest body of audience that you have?
No, most of our time they are recommendations. Like we make food for somebody, or we make an event and we sell salsas, and usually they get our information and then they share it with them, and then they call to the next event or we make catering for somebody and then they give our information to other people.
Perfect, I understand. Yeah, this is a very common position you're in. So I'm going to tell you, if you do a high production value brand development process, you're not going to lose anything. You're like, you change your whole logo, change even the name of the business, you're not going to lose anything. If you're word of mouth, those people have relationships with you. They have relationships with the people that referred you. You're going to retain those people.
Yeah, usually most of the time, the people that they buy for us one time, all the time when they have events, they call us.
Yeah. So you got nothing to lose by upgrading your logo, your whole brand. You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain. Everything to gain.
How do we know when we are right, when we're doing good?
So this is the hard part. This is the really hard part. You don't. And this is the thing, is your brand, you get a highly developed brand created, and that brand has no value out the gate. Do you remember that piece where I was saying like branding sets up marketing, fulfills branding? So you get a logo made, the day the Nike swoosh was created, it was worth exactly $35. That's what it was worth the day it was created. That's what they paid for it. And nobody knew what it was. So that's all it was worth, right? After millions and millions of advertisements went out with that swoosh, and also millions and millions of pieces of product that people enjoyed, they wore, and they're like, oh, this doesn't suck. Now it's worth a lot. Your logo, your business name, that's a safe. It's not the fortune inside the safe. It's just a safe. If it's specific to you, if it's recognizable, if it's extensible, if you can cut it out of wood, then it's a good safe. It's a well-made safe. If you can't cut it out of wood, if it's not recognizable, then it's a flimsy safe. But there's nothing in it the day it gets made. Nothing at all.
So you know how you say about the safe provider? In our case, how my auntie was saying, how she kind of split up like the little like women on the logo. Would that be like something that would be beneficial for the business, or should she just like keep like one, like let's say one woman on the logo?
Yeah, so I was asking to kind of diagnose to see where you're at, not to give advice, and I know that could be really confusing. I just wanted to know what, like, the current state of the brand assets were.
No, yeah.
So I don't know the answer, and I can't know the answer without looking at more touch points and going through kind of the whole, that's where I was saying like the process is an order of operations, like how you make peanut butter and jelly. That logo, it might make sense to throw the whole thing out. It might make sense to, how I would figure that out would be I would look at your business cards, your brochures, and then I would look at things that you're really into, that you like, businesses that you like, and I would look at your ideal clients, right? The people who are buying from you and what they like, and then I would have conversations with them, like the thing I was talking about at the beginning, where I'm like, I want to talk to your clients. I would talk to them about all this different imagery, and I would see how they feel about it, what they're attached to, and what they're drawn to and attracted to. And then we would make the decision about what to keep and what to get rid of and what to expand and what to simplify after all those conversations, so that we have like a really good basis for making strong decisions. So it's a big process. Does that help?
Yes.
Sweet, thank you. Cool. Time check, how are we doing?
We're coming up on 8.
Coming up on 8, all right.
I also wanted to hold some space for Carolina to introduce a little bit about what she's offering to her teaching. Thank you so much.
Cool. Is anybody taking notes on this? Does anybody want this?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the simplest thing is you guys have it.
Yeah.
Will you just send it out to everybody? You can, the whole deck. You guys can share with anybody you want. I have no bones. My name's all over it, so it doesn't hurt me at all. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, that's my contact information, and you guys are gonna have the deck. So thank you so much for listening to me jaw and dork out. Yeah.
Thank you.